Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inside the Birds Fantasy Football Show with Andrew DiCecco. I'm Jeff Mosher, and joining me, as always, is Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com, our fantasy football expert. And boy, what a week of football it's going to be, starting with the Thursday Thanksgiving games, Andrew. And I'm sure you'll have some very interesting plays for the Turkey Day games. But before we get into that, I want to ask you about the New York Giants. They have fired Jason Garrett. They are probably going to use Freddie Kitchens as their offensive coordinator, although Joe Judge suggested it would be collaborative. We know Freddie Kitchens is kind of a spread concept guy. The Giants have not really given fantasy owners a whole lot of automatic plays. I'm wondering if you think the change in coordinators has any kind of immediate impact from a fantasy perspective on any Giants players.
Absolutely, Jeff. And I think the first and foremost, you have to look at Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver, who offers a he has a very decent skill set that you can use him, move him around formations and spread him out and take advantage of his athletic prowess. I think you also have to look at Saquon Barkley, sparsely used in his return last week, just 12 touches. But I think that you're going to see them lean heavily on him. So those are two guys that I would look at. Evan Ingram's another player who is a good move tight end that I think that they'll be able to take advantage of the Eagles' second level this week. Obviously with Alex Singleton joining the second level in the absence of Davion Taylor. So those are just a few players that I think will see an uptick in usage and be a little bit more creative in their deployment.
Right. And of course, they do have Kenny Golladay, who at times in his career has been a good fantasy play. You just wonder if it's wait and see approach with this new offense, or if you go full throttle against the Eagles this weekend and think that there are some good matchups that you play right away.
Yeah, I wouldn't dive in right away with Freddie Kitchen in that Giants offense. Just a wait and see approach. There's obviously, if you have Saquon Barkley, you're going to play him. But if you have a Kadarius Toney, hold him, but don't play him this week. Wait to see how they utilize him and take advantage of his mismatches and athletic traits. But, the only play that I would definitely go with is Saquon this week.
All right. While we're on the subject, before we get into some of your other plays and waiver claims, obviously, if Jordan Howard cannot go for the Eagles in this game against Giants, does that make Boston Scott a playable entity, or are you looking at Miles Sanders just getting most of the reps? How do you see the run game situation there? Because Jordan Howard has actually been among the top 20 fantasy football scorers over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, that would be a tremendous loss. So obviously follow along this week and see his progress. But if he's not able to go, Jeff, Boston Scott is a notorious giant killer. Yeah. And I think that obviously Miles Sanders is going to share the bulk of the carries, probably 75%, I would assume. Boston Scott will factor into the game plan this week. So if he's out there, I'm not saying throw him in there as your RB2, but if you're desperate and you need a flex play this week, you could do a lot worse than Boston Scott.
All right, let's go through the waiver wires. It's getting late in the year. There's always, when you get this far in, it's hard to find some good waiver wire claims, but I saw some names out there that might be interesting. What do you think about waiver wire claims this week?
Well, Ty Johnson from the New York Jets, it's not a flashy option, but obviously Michael Carter's out with a high ankle sprain for the next couple of weeks. Ty Johnson, someone that I think can factor in both the receiving game and the running game, more of a goal line option. Not really sold on Tevin Coleman. I will look to him there. Dontrell Hilliard, the running back. Seems like we're playing running back carousel with the Tennessee Titans. Mm-hmm. Adrian Peterson was released. Not that he was a receiving option, but Dontrell Hilliard received 10 targets last week. So he sort of usurped Jeremy McNichols as the receiving back there. So I'll look to him. And Cedric Wilson, the wide receiver from the Dallas Cowboys. You don't know the status of Amari Cooper's out. You don't know the status of CD Lamb with his concussion. So you look at Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson, who had 7 targets last week. So obviously they didn't put up many points, but the opportunities will be there. So another desperation play if you need a streamer.
Yeah, I always find the Thanksgiving games difficult like that because you have to make that decision early, Wednesday night or Thursday morning.
Yeah.
About whether to play a guy like Cedric Wilson, not really knowing whether or not he's going to, definitely factor in, or how much of the game plan he'll factor in, even if he does wind up starting. But that is all part of the mental gymnastics of fantasy football as we get this late into this season. Let's discuss some of your start options. Who are some guys that you absolutely have to start this weekend? or this week?
A couple of interesting guys, Jeff. Taylor Heinicke. He's someone that is contributing as a passer, and he's finding the end zone as a passer, but he's also contributing as in the running game. And similar to that, I would say Cam Newton as well. 3 passing touchdowns in his return the past 2 weeks. Also offers rushing upside. Those two guys I would plug in. We mentioned Miles Sanders and Saquon Barkley this week. I think both game scripts favor into their. I mean, when you look at the Giants right now, the Eagles surrendered 5.5 rushing yards to Mark Ingram last week. Obviously, they didn't throw Saquon Barkley into the deep end, but I think that under a new offensive coordinator, the fact that this will be a second game back, I think he'll be able to see a little bit more volume and run with success. Remember, Alex Singleton was one of the main deficiencies on that second level along with Eric Wilson, who's no longer there, but he's not very proficient against the run. I think that they're going to attack downhill in that way. Miles Sanders, 94 yards in his return. We mentioned there's the possibility of not having Jordan Howard there. I think you're going to see a lot of Miles Sanders this week. I think will be featured heavily.
Let me tell you. If we look, go ahead.
And then for wide receiver, I would say Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup had 10 targets last week. He's really their lone receiving option that they can really count on this week. But keep an eye on the status of CeeDee Lamb.
Absolutely. Let me tell you about how Taylor Heinicke may have saved my season last week, Andrew, because we all know in fantasy football, one win can mean the difference between you making the playoffs and then a huge run or being on the way out. Sure. My starting quarterback was Lamar Jackson. My backup was, and this is one of my leagues, my backup is Carson Wentz. It was announced pretty late that Lamar Jackson wasn't going to be able to play. I did not like the Carson Wentz matchup against the Bills defense.
Smart man.
10 minutes before the 1:00 game, I picked up Taylor Heinicke, and started him. The man threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I won the game. So that right there is the type of movement that can save your season. So I like your pick of Heinicke this week. I think he's actually starting to come into his own with the passing game there as Washington turns the corner a little bit, and we'll see how they do over the next few weeks. How about some guys?
That was an astute play by you, by the way. That was good.
I left me no choice. I just didn't trust Carson. And of course, the Colts wound up scoring something like 38 to 40 points, but it was all
Jonathan
Taylor. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Why don't you give us some of your rest them options? Who are guys that you would not play this week and weekend?
Myles Gaskin, the Dolphins running back against a tough Carolina Panthers front, would stay away from him. Damian Harris, the running back for the Patriots. 10 carries, 56 yards against the Atlanta Falcons. I thought that was an opportune spot for him to really explode. That didn't happen. What's happening is Ramondre Stevenson is really factoring in to the backfield timeshare, and now you're starting to see almost a full-blown split. I wouldn't feel comfortable playing him this week. And then finally, as we look further down, I would say Van Jefferson, the wide receiver for the LA Rams. Obviously, he's a top waiver wire pickup, but remember, they had a bye week last week, and you don't know where Odell Beckham sits as far as his understanding of the playbook. So he may be a little bit ahead in the pecking order there. Obviously, you want to have a piece of that offense, Jeff, but wait and see how involved he's going to be coming out of the bye week.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I always thought when they got rid of Deshaun Jackson that Van Jefferson was going to have a much bigger role. I know he dropped a touchdown in their last game, so we'll see how he can do. Really some interesting options there. It's going to be a very fascinating week for fantasy owners. A lot of good names to play. A lot of guys on bye weeks. Arizona has a bye. Kansas City has a bye. So it's going to be a fascinating week.
Before I forget, David Montgomery has to be a must play. He had 106 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Lions the first time they played this year. 14 carries for 58 yards, I believe, last week. So the volume is coming back for David Montgomery. Sure. If you need to plug him in for tomorrow's game, because I think he's going to be one of the better plays at the position this week.
All right. Great stuff from Andrew DiCecco every week. It's the Inside the Birds Fantasy Football Show. That's Andrew DiCecco. I'm Jeff Mosher. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week.